Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Queens District Attorney Melinda, Queens Borough President Donovan Richards, Reverend Dr. Les Mullins, and please join me in welcoming the 57th Governor of the great state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Well, thank you everyone. Well, it's great to be back in the Far Rockaways. I've been here many times, especially when our Borough President was just a council member, and we learned how to be very good preachers on Sundays. So we've been out to this community many times, although I suspect Reverend Mullins would question that assessment. So I'm delighted to be in this church as well, a place of gathering, and we'll be talking about what this place has meant to all of us over this last decade. And I do want to give a special shout out to our current Borough President, who's been a friend of mine for a very long time, and we've been to diners, we've walked the streets, we've really worked together to lift the people of this community up. So let's give a round of applause to our Borough President, Donovan Richards. And our district attorney, Melinda Katz, has one of the toughest jobs. I think you probably thought Borough President was tough, and the challenges that you face every day. We spent a lot of time together when you were Borough President. Frequently you'd say, are you sure you're not running against me for Borough President? You're spending so much time here in Queens, but no, you serve so honorably in a tough situation. So let's give another round of applause to our district attorney, Melinda Katz. I need great partners in Albany, and in your Assembly member, Cleo Anderson, I want to thank him for being such a powerful voice for the people you represent and all the work that you continue to do. Which side are you on? Where's Cleo? Well, he was just with me a few minutes ago, so I'm sure he'll be joining us momentarily. We just took a walk and met some of the downtown businesses, so we'll see him. And Councilmember Sylvina Brooks Powers. She made it here yet? Okay. Literally left them on the street. I guess we went a little faster than they did. And of course, we'll be hearing from Reverend Dr. Leslie Mullins, and I know the First Lady's here as well, so let's give them a round of applause. I also have the dream team. I said when I became governor a little over a year ago, I'm going to assemble the best and the brightest. And I've found that with our Commissioner, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Jackie Bray, who's been through a lot with me. Our first week on the job together, dealing with Hurricane Ida and storms during the winter time and ice storms and power outages and all the things that come under the jurisdiction of being head of emergency services. Let's give a round of applause to Commissioner Jackie Bray. The GOSER Executive Director, Katie Brennan. You know a lot about this organization, Katie, and I want to thank you for all the work you've done tirelessly over many years to be part of building back a community that was just so battered by an unexpected storm, and I thank you for all the work you're doing and will continue to do. Also, our Commissioner of Environmental Conservation, I want to thank Basil Sagos for all the work he has done and will continue to do to build up the resiliency of our shoreline and everything we can do to make sure that we are prepared for Mother Nature and all that she brings to us. So we're here to talk about something, the word resiliency. It's resiliency of a coastline, it's the resiliency of our electric grid, it's the resiliency of buildings, but also, more importantly, it's about the resiliency of the human spirit. And that's what we saw on display. And that's why I took a little bit of extra time to walk the streets and talk to business owners and to ask them how they've dealt with that incredible experience of having to be the face of a community, the barber shop, the little diners and coffee shops. They were the gathering place at a time when people didn't even have power. You walked into those stops and you could find out how to get your cell phone charged. They were there when the community needed them. All these years, they're still there. And as someone who helped start a couple of small little businesses and a little bit beaten down downtowns where I come from, make sure we continue to support them. They are our lifeblood. They were there when we needed them most. So whatever you can do to support our local businesses and also, be there for them. But let's not forget the fact Hurricane Sandy meant that there were 60 families that lost a loved one. 10 years later, you wonder what that daughter, that husband, that spouse, son would have looked like, what they would have done. You never forget. You never forget the loss of a loved one, ever. especially under circumstances that were so wildly unpredictable. So they live on in our hearts and our memories, and we can never forget as we come together on this 10th anniversary to talk about what happened and where we've gone from there. There were real people's lives that were lost, and that is something we'll continue to talk about as we go forward. And also the bravery of the first responders and firefighters, and they put themselves on the line even when perhaps their own homes were on fire. I mean, remember the images? It was just so horrific. And they still didn't stay to protect their own home. They went out to protect others. And that is selflessness like we've never seen before. And I want to honor all of them as well, especially in Breezy Point, which was, the horrific fires there are still seared in our minds. And their courage will never be forgotten. And this devastation of our state will never be forgotten. But what do you do with that? People lost everything. They lost loved ones. They lost friends. They lost homes. They lost family heirlooms. I mean, the baby pictures, the wedding picture. And the damage is over $60 billion. And estimated of $600 million in property loss, destroyed over 300,000 housing units. Can you imagine that just being gone almost instantaneously? I mean, we have a real housing crisis now. What would it be if we never lost 300,000 all in one swoop? It's extraordinary how we're still paying the price of that storm. 2 million utility companies lost their power, or their customers lost their power. Thousands of roads closed, shuttered. Mother Nature was absolutely fierce and unsparing. And I remember I was a member of Congress working with your representatives from here at the time. And I thought it was the time when our country would stand up, just like we did after storms ravaged New Orleans, Katrina. But at the time, I was so, I would say, disgusted with the fact that our Congress wouldn't even give the money to help this community come back unless there was money found elsewhere in the budget. So I want you to know that. I was working to bring money here, even though I didn't even represent this area, because I knew how important it was. And to overcome that frustration, that sense that the other party couldn't even step up and help a community that was so desperate for help. So that is also a reflection that is still with me today. But Mother Nature, we saw the impact. We also saw what people have done, and that's why we're in this church today. We saw how God's people rose up all over this community to embrace each other and to take care of them and let them know they're going to be okay at a very real human level. That's why we're in this church. Reverend Dr. Leslie Mullins, I want to thank you on behalf of a grateful community a decade later. A decade ago, you weren't hosting a gathering like this. You were literally hosting the state's FEMA Operations Center. This was the place. This was the place. And you and your congregation emptied the church, got rid of all the seats and the lectors, everything. You invited FEMA in. It was the only building in the community with the lights on at the time. And one person from Virginia drove up a generator. That's why we were able to power this area. Somebody in Virginia made sure that this place could be a sanctuary to let people know that there is a place where the lights are on. And it became a beacon of light for this community in the greatest sense of every word. And for a long time, you helped feed over 3,500 people a day. 3,500 people a day, that's extraordinary. You distributed clothes and food and 70,000 cases of water, helped us get out and raised almost $7 million in relief funds. You helped raise that. And this community rose up. This community rose up so powerfully. A beautiful model to others of what you do when you're knocked down. You're knocked down hard. You rise up. You embrace hope. And you look out for each other. That's exactly what was going on in this space. And I'm grateful that you're able to rebuild yourselves and open up this space again and have this beautiful building that we're gathered in. And I want you to know that at the time, not everybody agreed with the decision to open up this church as a FEMA center. Reverend Mullins is smiling. I'm sure it wasn't time to smile back then. Time does heal, doesn't it, Reverend? People didn't think it was appropriate to use a house of God as an emergency center. But you knew better because God called you to say, this is how we serve the people of God in every way. And that's why I want to honor you today. So people like Reverend Mullins are not the type of people looking for recognition, but we're going to give him recognition in a few moments. He deserves it. He deserves it. And I know you all agree over there. Yes, let's give him a round of applause. But we took care of people's physical needs, spiritual needs. We also have to do something going forward, and that was the advent of the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery to oversee the distribution of $4.5 billion in federal recovery funds that eventually came after a lot of battles in Washington. And this was to make sure that we were ready for future storms. And in the Rockaways and Breezy Point, we made over $45 million investment in a community reconstruction program for drainage and damage assessment and management and workforce development and creating more generators. And it's all about long-term resiliency. You can deal with the aftermath immediately, but then you have to, what does long-term resiliency look like? It says you're doing things smart and you're getting ready for the next one. And we're investing and thinking about the future disasters that could do the very same. And of course, that comes down to the electric grid. It's too routine by now. Storm comes, power goes out, and you pray. That's not a strategy. That is not a life strategy. And we have invested, knowing that that is a vulnerability for our families and our businesses, invested over $19 billion in the electric grid to defend against extreme weather outages, and that they call the storm hardening of the grid. Storm hardening, you hear this a lot. What does that mean? It means we're going to be ready the next time. We'll do our very, very best. We're making it more resilient and adaptable. And also in the Rockaways, here's what we've done. $49 million to help elevate our substations, $10 million to help out with the Rockaways distribution circuits, because we know that this is coming again. We know it's coming again. I was a governor literally at just a week, I think, last year, and Ida hit. Now you talk about these events being once a century event. Well, the last one we had was 10 years ago. Then we had Ida. And I walked through the streets of Queens with our representatives right here. I saw the flooded basements. I held the hands of people who were weeping when they saw all their life's possessions being literally washed down a drain, and those who lost loved ones because they were trapped in their homes. It happened. It happened here. It happens in Queens. And it has an effect on you. And it's a motivating effect. It says we must do everything we can in our power. So we can't just say there's one place, go sir, the Office of Storm Recovery is there for one storm from a decade ago. We're going to today announce that this will be permanent. This is going to be there as a place where we're thinking about the future but able to respond in the immediacy if this happens again, and make sure that the communities have the resources, not just when you need it in the storm, but also leading up to that. So the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery will become the Office of Resilient Homes and Communities, a larger scale. It's going to continue that work, but also fulfill our responsibility to New York's families by being ready for these events in the future. And I promised I would do this in our State of the State, and I'm announcing also that we're releasing our report, our 10-year report on our state's progress after Sandy recovery and our resiliency. You know why you do a report? Because you have to learn the lessons. You have to say what went on here, what did we do right, what can we do better? We're always pushing ourselves to do better. And the state has already spent 91% of the $4.5 billion appropriation, completing more than 11,000 recovery and resiliency projects. But we're not through yet. We also have to continue helping these small businesses because they are not just battered by Sandy, they're also battered by the pandemic. I heard that as I walked the streets once again today. So to many mom and pop shops, the restaurants, the cafes, as I went down to Platinum Plus Unisex Hair Care, where our own Borough President gets his hair done. You get this done every week? No. Just guess they did a really good job. You had one really good visit, huh? And the corner coffee shop, a mother and a daughter, who've been there 36 years, and they never gave up. So just to stop by and let us know that they've built back just as we're building back the future. So as you know, we also have training programs. I encourage everybody to be trained because, again, we live in a vulnerable area, a vulnerable time, and I'll continue to do whatever I can to focus on climate resiliency as part of our overall strategy as well. So I'm going to be giving out some of these nice to-go bags here. Take them with you, take them home for your kids, and make sure that you're ready. So residents, be ready. According to the calendar, we're winding down our hurricane season, except 10 years ago, it was just getting fired up. So I don't want to frighten anybody. We actually had our Hurricane Preparedness Summit this summer in anticipation, so it's always about being ready. So I would say follow emergency alerts on alert.ny.gov. Take one of our citizen preparedness courses. There's over 350,000 people have taken them, and it teaches the skills you need in a situation like that. So we're here today to say again, it's about the resiliency. And I'm looking out at a group of people who are the most resilient in our country. You have been through so much, but Mother Nature could never, ever take you down. And as your governor, I'm proud to represent you. I'll be there for this community to help lift all of you up. But it started in places like this with people like Reverend Dr. Mullins, and I want to call him up at this time and officially thank him for everything he did for our community. Reverend Mullins. Kristen, we want the First Lady here as well. You deserve to share in this. Where's the First Lady of our church? Oh, there she goes. Oh. Let me get out in front. I'll slide over here a little bit. Reverend Dr. Mullins, I could take the next 15 minutes and read that whole proclamation, or I encourage all of you to come to church on Sunday and read it here yourself. How's that?
Great.
Reverend Mullins.
I'm over it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am surprised first. The governor pulled one on me. I had no idea this was coming, but thank you. Thank you, Governor. So I'll start by thanking everyone here for being here. On behalf of the Far Rockaway Church, Far Rockaway Community Church, and Challenge Star Schools, and all community leaders and clergy members, those who supported us and those who were in the grind and on the ground with us over the time we went through the ordeal with Superstorm Sandy. We thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to our President, Donovan Richards. During Superstorm Sandy, he was just a young man then. And as you probably know by now, he had some hair. But we thank you. You were a pivotal part of that effort to build and to help community. You were next door. And we had this shack-like place here behind there, and they would get stuff. He was the deputy chief, actually he was the chief of staff for the then Senator Saunders, and he used to push a lot of stuff to us. Maybe he was overwhelmed with it, he was just trying to offload it. But he used to push a lot of stuff to us that we could use. And then to Melinda Katz, our DA, thank you for your years of service to this community and hard work that you've done over the years. Sylvina Brooks, Majority Whip, and Council Member, thank you. She's been a partner with us for years. Through Sandy, through the pandemic, and you name it, she's always been there. And we thank you for your hard work. Assemblyman Khalil Anderson, and we thank you also, sir. And all the leaders of this community, all the clergy members, all the people from the Challenge Charter School Network. Who, you may not know this, but Challenge Charter School, one of the, was an extension of the FEMA site here. So when we got jammed up here, because there were so many people, then we would push some people over to Hartman Lane by the school. And those teachers and administrators, they put their heads down. And we thank you. We thank you guys for all that you've done. And I see our board chair, here, Frederica Jeffries, former Assistant DA. Thank you for leading us through those times and even now. I want to say special thanks to the administration of this church, the associate pastors, assistant pastors, Reed, Stanley, Johnson, and all the leaders of this church who worked. I was the voice and I was the face, but they were the ones who were behind me. And that's the reason why we were able to diligently help the community. And last but not least, I did say it already, I want to thank our Governor, Kathy Hochul. We're excited and grateful to have you today, you and your team. We're appreciative of you because you're a fighter. You're a champion for regular people, we know that. She looks out for the less fortunate. And your visit today is an immense honor that speaks to your concern of the local community. So thank you again for being with us today. So as we commemorate the 10th anniversary of Superstorm Sandy, I want to acknowledge, in general, all the people in this room who experienced the storm's devastation firsthand. Some of our students here were just babies then. Some weren't even, well, they were babies then. and they're here today. They probably heard a lot, and they're probably still experiencing some of the impact of Superstorm Sandy. Undoubtedly, Superstorm Sandy was one of the most difficult times in the lives of the Far Rockaway community. Our city and the surrounding area experienced extreme flooding and loss of power. We experienced loss of basic necessities, the ability to work. Many people lost their homes. Some people even lost their lives. We didn't know it at the time, but that storm would prove to be a turning point for our forgotten community today. 10 years after Sandy, you only have to walk down Central Avenue to see come back better and stronger. But the evening of October 29, 2012, the power was out. Far Rockaway sat in darkness. A couple of days in, my longtime friend and senior advisor, Dr. Michael Easter, drove all night to bring a generator from West Virginia to 1414 Central Avenue. Put your hands together. He's not here. That generator provided our first light, and it gave the good citizens of Far Rockaway some hope after the storm. At that time, our old church, our old community church of the Nazarene building was standing right here. And without seeing it before, it's likely that it's hard to imagine in comparison to this. Our small church and the empty concrete garage behind it became the unlikely epicenter for relief and recovery of Project Sandy. Over the life of Project Sandy, we fed, like the governor said, over 78,000 hot meals, distributed over $6.8 million of materials and goods. And this was an official FEMA site. And through this site, we helped distribute over $15 million in restoration funds. After 10 years later, we are here. Yes, I want you to look around where you are now. That little church building is now this beautiful, state-of-the-art worship center, along with community space and for growing businesses and for serving the needs of our community. Above us, there's over 100 units of affordable housing, people living in them. Around the corner from here sits 1279 Redfern Avenue, a building that Superstorm Sandy demolished and destroyed. 10 years later, that renovated building now houses our middle school, one of the finest middle schools, by the way, in Far Rockaway. Yes, we see the signs everywhere in Far Rockaway how we have built back better and stronger. A perfect example of this is just a block. 1520 Central Avenue was a storage building for distribution. It was an old, raggedy building. Rats and rodents and pigeons and raccoons. But we went in and we chased them out. And we cleaned it up, and we made it a distribution center. Well, it wasn't a nice site, a nice place to be, but it worked then. Today, that old dilapidated building is now an oasis of promise. It housed 75,000 square foot of our early college, CTE High School. So after 10 years, a lot has been accomplished since Superstorm Sandy visited our shores. We know that the work is not done. But in a way, the storm helped us to rise out of the ashes like never before. You could consider us the phoenix. I've been serving this community for many years now as a pastor, school leader, advocate, and it is clear that nothing, and I say nothing, can stop us. Sandy did not stop us. COVID-19 didn't stop us and still can't stop us. We are a resilient people. I say it every day and I say it again. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. And we are tough people. Far Rockaway, we are tough people. So no matter the storms, the pandemics, the forces that may try to tear us down, we will rise. And as we rise, we show the children around us that they too are unstoppable. Challenge charter school children, you are unstoppable. And I close. With work, with diligence, with partnership, we will continue to form the future that Far Rockaway needs and deserves. Storms may come and go, but we will always rise together. And with the help of our governor, we will continue to form the future that Far Rockaway needs and deserves. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's now my honor and privilege to introduce and to bring to you Governor, Borough President Donovan Richards.
Good morning. And I'm pretty happy with the governor we have, so but truly an honor to be here. And I want to thank our governor, who truly has been a firm partner each and every day across our borough. She is not a fair weather friend to Queens. She is everywhere. And more importantly, when she comes, she brings that big wallet with her. And she spends a lot of money in Queens County. So I'm forever grateful to our governor, who is not a fair weather friend, who walks these streets. And as she alluded to, we meet in diners and church. She even gives sermons sometimes in church. But it's truly an honor to have you out here. And of course, to my colleagues in government, thank you, because nothing we've accomplished over the course of the last decade would be possible without a strong partnership. We think about 10 years later, and I know I'll never forget the sound of the wind or the storm surge sweeping entire homes away in this community. But even amongst the destruction we encountered, what I'll also never forget is the scenes of neighbors helping neighbors. And as Reverend Mullins alluded to, this stretch of Central Avenue became Relief Row, from 1414 Central Avenue to 1526 Central Avenue, which was James Sanders' office, my office as well, to Sharon, who's not with us, who was at the Far Rockaway Library at the time. I sort of get very emotional thinking about what happened on these streets, how people who had lost everything, who did not have hope, who gave up hope in government when it didn't arrive, how they were able to come down on Central Avenue and get assistance. I remember those newborn babies who didn't have Pampers nor food, who were able to come to this church, come to 1526 Central Avenue, come to Far Rockaway Library, and be able to get the basic necessities and to be treated with dignity and the respect that they deserve. So 10 years later, it is not lost on me how far we've come. And we all know that Superstorm Sandy did not discriminate. Didn't matter whether you were rich, didn't matter your socioeconomic status, didn't matter your race or religion. It hit all of us on this peninsula. It didn't matter if you were in Far Rockaway or Breezy Point. But we do know that there were historic disparities that existed in this community. And sort of Superstorm Sandy came in and ripped that Band-Aid right off, and the rest of the world got to see what we encountered growing up and coming up in this community. As Superstorm Sandy stole our homes, our businesses, our neighbors. But one of the things that Superstorm Sandy could not do, it could not steal the spirit of the people of Far Rockaway. That's what defined us, October 29th. Not the way the wind howled or the water crashed, but how we reacted once the sun came out. It's a story of resiliency that's been 10 years running. And even as we look to the past, we look towards the future. How we rebuilt the Rockaway Boardwalk, how we still have more work to do with the Army Corps to make sure that we build protection along the bay. There are also some signs of hope, as our state comptroller released a report a few weeks ago, how the median household income is up 30% on the peninsula and 42% in Far Rockaway over the last decade. That road work you saw coming in, Madam Governor, that you put a little money in as well, that $139 million worth of state-of-the-art sewer and water infrastructure going in was no accident. It was ensuring that we leave this peninsula better than we found it. We also are going to cut the ribbon soon on a new $40 million Far Rockaway Library. $60 million. $60 million for Bayswater Park. $1 billion of federal funding going into our NYCHA developments, and I know Congressman Meeks could not be here, but we work collectively together to make sure that we can harden infrastructure and move our heating systems further up in the event of another storm for residents here. New mixed-income housing, because remember, there were a lot of folks displaced during Hurricane Sandy. Well, guess what? Those folks can come back and live in truly, deeply affordable housing right here on this block and beyond. So gone are the days that Rockaway is the afterthought. The fact of the matter is that we are so much stronger now than we were on October 29, 2012. But yet, we still face some unique challenges here. But I could not be prouder of the progress we've made over the course of the last 10 years. So today, we remember the friends and family members we lost during the storm. But we also celebrate how far we've come and how much we still have to achieve. May those who we lost in Hurricane Sandy never be forgotten. May we continue to remain Rockaway strong. There is no community more resilient than this community. I've been in a lot of places, whether it's the pandemic, whether it was Sandy. We continue to not just simply build back Far Rockaway, but we're building it back together, collectively, through partnership. So I want to thank each and every one of you for having me. Today is really a day to commemorate Sandy, but a day to also look forward to the future. With that being said, before I bring up our district attorney, of course I have to acknowledge the First Lady of Queens, Tamika Richards, who's here as well. And now I could go home in peace later. I learned from Reverend Mullins. But truly an honor to now introduce someone who I've had the honor of knowing. I don't want to show my age, but for over a decade, someone who preceded me in the seat as Borough President, someone who helped me to accomplish many of the things we did in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. She now is the head law enforcement officer of our borough, someone who's working with us to not just ensure we work on safety issues on law enforcement, but also investing in many of the young people who we see in this audience to make sure that they never get into the justice system in the first place. With that being said, it gives me great honor to bring up former Madam Borough President, now District Attorney of Queens, Melinda Katz.
Thank you, Borough President Richards. He didn't tell you we met 10 years ago, but we were the same age. So I was the Borough President a year after Sandy, about a year and a few months after Sandy. And after hearing other people speaking today, it brought me back to that time. And a few things occurred to me. Number one, it occurred to me at how vulnerable the Rockaways were and how government, and we had let it become so vulnerable that when a storm like Sandy came, and let's come back, no transportation, no subways for I don't know how many months it was. We had a ferry, the contract kept expiring. We had to make sure that it would keep continuing. Our children were going from school to school at some point because the schools were destroyed. We needed places to give out food and clothing, and Reverend Mullins, you are just an amazing man and an amazing leader, and you're there whenever anybody needs you to be there. So when I became the Borough President a year after Superstorm Sandy, we actually realized not a dollar had been given out yet. We hadn't rebuilt anything. And so with Dan Brown in my office from the Rockaways, we got together a task force, and we made sure that we were moving the process along with all the other agencies. I mean, because it took the state, it took the feds, it took the city. And it was an amazing time. But what I find even more amazing today is that we have a governor that doesn't want to wait until we're vulnerable again. She wants to continue what had been started and make sure that we are watching every single day to make sure that our resiliency is still there, but that if anything ever happens, her administration, Governor Kathy Hochul's administration, is in place already to be as helpful as they possibly can. So no one will ever have to wait for services again. God forbid anything ever happens. And you know, she's got a few things going on in her life right now, but she's here because local communities matter to Governor Hochul. And so I want to thank her for I did accuse her once of running for Borough President against me because she was in Queens so much. And you know, the caring that is there is truly amazing. So we're happy to be here today. We're happy that everyone is together memorializing this 10 years, because I don't think you can forget. If you forget, you know, we know that things happen when you forget things. So I think the fact that we're here on the anniversary of the 10 years is amazing. I also think what's remarkable, Reverend Mullins, and by the way, Kevin, thank you for showing us around the businesses today for the Rockaway Development Corporation. We really appreciate all the work that you do as well on the local businesses that are here in Far Rockaway. Our Borough President did amazing things at redeveloping out here, but we always also, as the Borough President, I talk about care for the local businesses. But Reverend Mullins, what I see today are all these kids that are out here today. The teenagers that are here today who are learning about good government, who are learning about how to get things done, learning about a room full of people who put their heads together for a decade now to make sure that our future is bright. I'm the District Attorney of Queens County. I can prosecute, I can go after those individuals that buy guns in Alabama and North Carolina, and they bring them up here to Queens and they sell them to our children. I can prosecute them and I can convict them for it. But I need to make sure that the next generation of children don't pick up that same gun. And so to have the teenagers here today, so the youth programs and having the teenagers here today and the high school students, look around you. These are folks that care about your future. They care about where you end up, and they want you to be involved every single day because you got to hold us as your elected officials accountable, and we count on you for that. Thank you, everybody. Please, I'm getting the eye. I'm supposed to close out the program. So this has been the program for the 10-year from Superstorm Sandy. Please remember to pick up your bags, your go bags, on the way out. And can we hear it once again for the administration and for our governor, Governor Hochul.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our program. Thank you for coming. Safe travel home.